Which camera one? We're in that one. Okay, so hello and welcome to the latest episode. I'll just get close to the mic again. The latest episode of TriPOD Behind the Creative. We're joined today by a special guest, Mychael Owen. And there isn't really a subtitle that you can give to Mychael Owen. Creative extraordinaire? Would that do it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I would have floated simply creative. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I'll talk about the fact that I was in a creative role and I wasn't actually being creative for 15 years. I just thought I was. But yes, I'm more creative now at 55 than I've been ever, I think. All
right. Well, that begs the question: should we go through a kind of brief history of Mychael Owen, before we'll talk more about what you're doing now?
Yeah. So shall I do that now? Shall I?
Yeah. That's
okay. So a brief history. I was born in Manchester. So I feel like a Manc, but I was kind of taken away because the family broke down here and rebuilt over in Derby, and then ended up studying Newcastle, and I've been up in Newcastle. My highest qualification going way back is furniture design. It's nothing to do with what I've ended up zigging and zagging around. Started a marketing MA at the same time as I started a business when I was 30, which was a first creative agency. I just couldn't hack both at the same time. So I'd got part way through the first year, 11 months actually from memory, of the first year of the MA, and stopped because One Best Way, which was the first agency, which was a creative agency, I called it, was getting busy. So that's when I was 30. Through my 20s, it was various things, managing McDonald's restaurants, helping people to start businesses, actually working for the two biggest enterprise agencies in the Northeast, one of which was Trust and one of which was Project Northeast. One of them exists now, the other one doesn't. So strangely, I was helping people to build businesses, and because I'd won a few awards with a tiny little business I started straight from university, so I was considered to, I was pretending to know what I was doing, and some people believed me.
Was that a furniture-based business? Because I'm just trying to figure out where the furniture fits.
It's a great question. I mean, basically, it was very precise what we did. We looked at promotional gifts, and this was in 1991, and we thought most of them are shit. So maybe because I can make nice wooden stuff, and Keith, my mate from Northern Ireland, can make nice metal stuff. What about if we said to people, stop sending 1,000 things at £2 each to people you don't know, and kind of going like that, and being more targeted in your approach, reduce the units and increase the quality. And that's a fundamental, for certain types of business, a fundamentally great way of thinking about how to build, targeting your marketing. We didn't realize it was good. We just thought, don't send rubbish to loads of people you don't know. Send something really lovely to people that you do. So to answer your question, Mike, it's like scaling down, being able to make big wooden things into little wooden things. And we picked up locally Northern Electric back in the day, mm-hmm. and some big names, actually. Business in the community from memory. We turned over £36,000, thought we were rich. And Keith introduced me to the concept that profit is different than turnover. Because he said, keep your
important concept.
Well, he said to me, will you keep your receipts? Keep your receipts. Well, why? There's money coming in. Just keep we've got money so we can buy stuff. That was the first business, lasted a couple of years. Then I was offered a £13,000 salary as a McDonald's trainee manager, so we packed it in. And Keith went back to Northern Ireland to make antiques. I said, Keith, you can't make antiques. He says, you can if you're from Northern Ireland. So Keith's making antiques. So at 30, after helping other people to start businesses through my 20s, I thought, I'll just do this. And I remember why I started up One Best Way. It was because I met a guy called Felim Kavlan, who was massive, and he was Irish as well, actually. And he was in an office. How big's this room? I don't know. However big this room is. Sorry, that's rubbish for being on camera. You can't see the room, but it's quite a big room. It would easily house 10 people working. And Felim was in the corner, right? And he was really good. He was a hybrid, which were quite unusual, a hybrid web developer. So he both designed and built really good websites. But he turned over a really small amount and didn't really understand how to communicate what he did. So I said, look, and I was working at Leighton at the time. Remember Leighton? Mm-hmm. Leighton are still going, aren't they? So I was placed at Leighton. I was working at the university, Sunderland University. I was placed inside Leighton for some reason. And I thought, I could do this, you know. And I did. So me and Cap fell in set up this company. And One Best Way grew to 20 odd people. Then a few years later, we set up a brand consultancy. I'll tell you why we set up Violet Bick in just a moment. But we also had a little hosting company, because that was our accidental company.
Was that Angelfish?
Angelfish was slightly different. Angelfish was described as an SEO company at the beginning, then it broadened out to a digital marketing company. The tiny little accidental hosting company was because when you're making loads of websites, you accidentally have lots of... so it only turned over 50 to 100,000 quid. It's called Done and Dusted. It was very simply put together hosting company, web support services. But we ended up with 4. Web support services, digital marketing, brand, and then the bigger one, which was One Best Way, which I suppose is described as a creative agency morphed into a marketing agency. But a funny thing happened about 10 years in was a guy appeared called Les Stern. And Les Stern is a semi-retired former head of planning and strategy from Saatchi's, that you may have come across. He kind of moved in and out of a few companies, but he really liked Mark Tinian, a great guy who was a co-director of mine inside the brand consultancy Violet Bick, and he liked me and what we said, because we said things like marketing is a waste of time. We ran an event called Marketing is a Waste of Time, charged people, and 100 people came when we were on Holts Estate, and lots of the audience were marketing companies, and they weren't very pleased that the event that they were coming to was called Marketing is a Waste of Time. And the basic principle is until you've worked out why your client is different and better, stop getting to spend loads of fucking money and outspend the competition, because it's shit. It's not good for you, agencies, and it's very borderline patronising, of course. But the reason we were comfortable with being borderline patronising to companies which were much bigger than us, we're only about 20 people at the time, was because of the wind beneath our wings. One of them was the former head of planning and strategy from Saatchi's, and the other one was the former FD of Nike, Roger Blight, because Roger Blight read what we were saying as well. Roger joined the team, and Les joined the team, and there was little me and little Mark, and we were a little force to be reckoned with. In my little brain, of course, none of this is the truth, this is my truth. But the 4 of us sat at the front and got attacked by half the audience. Didn't care, because we said, if you're the kind of marketing agency who just takes your clients' money without, I'm repeating myself, fully understanding even the competitive set, you're not very good. And we're better than you, because we basically have a lot of people coming into our One Best Way company saying, help us to be known. And we go, what for? And they go, don't know. Say, well, go to our brand consultancy then. Yeah. You know that this is the way you guys think. Mm-hmm. And I know this is the way you guys think. That's one of the reasons I'm here, of course. But don't do that. And of course, some agreed with us and most didn't. But that was back in the day. Then I got to my mid-40s and we turned over a couple of million quid, and I was fed up, and I wasn't very good at people anymore. I was really good at people at the beginning, and then I just wasn't. I'm not sure why. You can come back to that if you like.
Do you not think it's that the people, as you grow, the people that you need change? So effectively you start off obviously small boutique type agency. You said you get to 20 headcount. Was that across all business or just in the one?
Across all businesses we got to 30.
There you go.
So there was a mix.
So you get to a point where you just can't have, as a boss, the personal interaction that you used to have in the early years with everybody.
Yeah. There's that. But also I had a middle management team, one or two of whom weren't right or good enough. Or you know what wasn't right, without sounding too LinkedIn, is there was a lack of true purpose, really. Not in the way that it's thrown around willy-nilly these days by them young whippersnappers. It just didn't feel right. I didn't know why we were doing what we were doing, really. I loved Violet Bick because it had an opinion. Honestly, people have said to me sometimes, here, business bloke, Mike, if there's one piece of one piece of advice you could give me about how to make my business stronger or just better, however that word manifested, I would say, look, just get an opinion. Because everything you're doing right now is not opinion based. You're kind of looking left and right, and the reason you blend in is because you're not saying anything different. Get an opinion. And so oftentimes I work with companies nowadays to help to work out what is their opinion and how to make that noticed and relevant and chosen. But at the time when I was 45ish, I'd had enough. With hindsight, I perhaps should have got an MD in, or looked at getting an MD in, because I was no good as an MD anymore. I should have just gone away and stopped faffing about for a bit and then maybe come back, because we were solid and profitable.
Is this a case then of your personal day-to-day activity had just shifted so far from what you wanted to do that you were disengaged from it?
That was the question I was going to ask as well, which is, if you are a creative at heart, but you've built an agency, and then you just end up getting caught up in running the business and doing non-creative things, which is essential, can you ever balance that?
It's an interesting one. I mean, earlier on in this conversation, I suggested right at the very beginning, maybe 2 or 3 minutes in, that there was a 15-year period where I wasn't really being that creative. And this is what I'm talking about. It wasn't truly creative for me. I felt I was being truly creative towards the end. The Violet Big thing really opened my eyes to world-class work, which is an overused term, and some people don't know what that means. I think I do, because Les was one of the gang who, if we look all the way back to Birnbach and Ogilvy and Dave Trott, who's still around and writing his 6th book now, I love these people because of the way they think. And you know what? They're all saying quite similar things, little steps to the right and to the left. But Les was that person, and he was the physical manifest of a completely different way of thinking. The Northeast is pretty small, and I think it can become a damaging echo chamber, and it was a damaging echo chamber for me because we were considered to be pretty good, but it was the wrong ladder. It was I didn't really understand or want to go to London, the London-esque approach, whatever that means. And
if magically you could have just picked up and dropped your same setup into Manchester or London, you think you would be still going today in a different guise? Like, what do you think the impact would have been?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, particularly because of the Manchester connection, because I crave Manchester now, you see, because, I think I'm Liam Gallagher, but I'm not, that kind of thing. It's interesting, my daughter's 7, so my life's been kind of upside down. 55-year-old broke 7-year-old daughter, never been married, wears a bit of jewellery. Is he gay? What's going on there? Is that thing going on?
That's my next question.
Yeah, scratch it off the list.
We can come to that. Not anymore. No, I mean, it's interesting. Life's been interesting. Interesting is the word that, I'm jumping about a bit, I'm sorry, but if there's a word that kind of defines where I am now, I'm going to go ahead a little bit, then come back. Very recently, friends of mine who are such good friends that I'm going to their wedding in 2 weeks' time, they approached me because they started reading my blog, which I started writing when I was 50. It's called 50 Odd. Surprise, surprise, because I was 50 and odd. So they read it and they said, these are some people I'd never met. About 10,000 people a day read it at its peak, and about 10,000 people a day read it now. And they said, very simply, Andy and Juliana, they said, we like your stuff. We put stuff out as well, but not many people are interested in our stuff. Why is that? And I said, because it's not interesting. And, they're still talking to me, so that's a good sign. But the interesting thing is, I keep saying the word interesting now, is most businesses I work with or look at, they're just not interesting. And of course, we can look at defining interesting in quite precise ways, I think. But that's where I am now. Because coming back to your question, sorry, Matt, was at the end, it wasn't about displacing to Manchester or anywhere or London or anything. It was just I was bored. And I didn't know I was bored. So there was a bit of self-sabotage going on. There was a bit of, the middle management team messed it up. I wasn't going to, so it wasn't me, a bit of that. Although the business was still strong, so I'm not suggesting it was about to fail. It stumbled a bit. But at the end, I'd helped as many people as I possibly could get new jobs. We were working with Virgin at the time, just before they launched the current account. So I said to them, employ these people, they're great. And 2 of them did get jobs. After that, I've met 1 or 2 people in the recent years. Is this okay, me just rambling a bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In the recent years, who after doing things that don't exist, like consultancy and design, they wanted to do something that does exist. And lots of people going into a coffee shop. Why? Because you can smell it and taste it and pick it up. And it means no one can say I'm crap for doing invisible things and charging people lots of money. Doing a film, a 3-minute film's going to cost how much? Yeah. So it's taken you 3 minutes, hasn't it? No, it takes more than 3 minutes. So I started a clothing brand called Always Wear Red, based on an interest, something that was really interesting to me, and it was the relationship between what you wear and how you feel. Because the story I've bored people with before is when I was 15 and Claire, who lived up the road, was 16, she would only fancy me if I had my special T-shirt on. in my head, you know what I mean? I was James Bond when I had my special T-shirt. Claire's coming down the road, Mum, can you iron my T-shirt quick? That kind of thing. So yeah, the relationship between what we wear and how we feel was, I thought, I want to make build a clothing brand. And the way I did it was, I thought it would cost maybe 50,000 quid. It ended up costing 100 grand to get in. I did it for 7 years. I'm kind of at the tail end of it now. And I work with the very, very best makers in the United Kingdom, some of whom are the best in the world, the best materials in the world. Everything was mega. I was helped by some great people. The guy who set up Howie's, he's called Dave Hyatt, who's become a friend. Sold it to Timberland for it's either 3.2 million or 2.3, I can't remember, so I thought, I'll just do that. That'll be good. He's now set up a company called Hyatt Denim. He's one of the leading living marketers in the UK, I think. Set up the Do Lectures, which you may or may not have heard of. The Do Lectures is now in its 14th or 15th year. And when I stopped the company, I was on a 6-figure salary and I just went to zero. And my friends went, are you mental? You know what I mean? So maybe I am. The answer, I wasn't sure. I don't know. I'll get back to you. But I had to find new people who were equally bonkers to go, I don't want to do this, so I'm not going to do it. So I went to the Do Lectures. I don't know how I ended up there, but it was full of people going, I'll just do this now, you know, because I didn't want to do that. You know, Graham Fink was there, the D&AD's most flipping awarded advertiser ever. He was just stood in the field there, and David's over there, and his family's over there, and this guy who flogged his company too soon, he said, I flogged my company too soon, I couldn't take it where it wanted to go. I said, what was it? Have I heard of it? He said, yeah, it was Vimeo. I said, I've heard of it. So it's kind of, I'm mixing with these wonderful people that are all as equally broken and fed up and worried and upset as I was at that time, because my mates didn't understand me anymore. You've done what? You know what I mean?
Just because it's in their mind as simple as that was the money you were on, that's now the money you're not on, and therefore they can't understand.
Yeah, because the trajectory of my closest friend, you know, I mean, I'm from Manchester, he's from Liverpool, so we shouldn't get on anyway, but we do. You know, and we still get on, and he lives in Hexham, right near me now, and we're still mates. We're going out next Friday, but the thing is, he'll never get his head around why you walk away from 100 grand salary, and because he's a senior engineer, mechanical engineer who worked at, I think he's worked at 3 companies in his life, fantastic, no mortgage, 2 or 3 cars, kids are in university, they can do what they want. But that's not for me, you know. But he's no righter or wronger than me. He's just being him. But yeah, to be with people who were equally restless is a good word, you know, I think. Equally restless and just dissatisfied with where they were. I felt, oh, okay, cool. But you know what? Some of the greatest earners and the most significant people are still broken people. Amazing. And I thought, it wasn't like, oh, I'm glad you're broken as well. It was, I'm not alone, you know. Yeah. It just wasn't right where I was.
So without necessarily getting into too much detail, how did you transition to where you need to be? Like, how did you go from that, what sounds like a bit of an epiphany, to then thinking, right, I now need to wind this all down and disperse? Like, what was that like? Are
you talking about the agency or the always wear red fashion thing, or both?
Well, probably both, really. I'm sure there'd be certain similarities, albeit probably a different emotion attached to the always wear red, because it was the second phase. And
yeah, it's very, very key question. The agency, 2 things happened really. One was, I felt like the devil because I was closing something down for selfish reasons, and people were going to lose their jobs, even though I did my best to displace them to somewhere that suited them. And the other thing that happened at this time was I found out who my friends were and weren't, you know, because some people move closer to you, but the vast majority move away from you. And I also found myself with 6 legal claims, even down to...
From clients or from staff?
2 clients,
all right,
not staff, suppliers largely. And this is the truth, right? I was advised to just bin the business, but one of my co-directors, I'll tell you who he is, Paul, who is now pretty senior in Enigma, Paul Newcomb, brilliant guy, good friend, super loyal to me. His redundancy figure was pretty high. They said, just fuck him off, you know. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So we took out a personal loan of 20 odd grand and put it into the business, because if I didn't, I would have felt crap. It was nothing to do with the bubble of the Northeast. It's just that I've got a very supportive other half as well, Lisa. You know, I used to think life was like that, of course, but it isn't. It's like that. So she was been cool with me in all of these times. But yeah, the two things. So you find out who your friends are and who your friends aren't, but you just fight through it. And in the end, I just smiled. An example is, the photocopier that had been sat there that you'd pay this fucking company God knows what for how many years suddenly said, yeah, we'll take it back for you, no problem, $3,000. So it's like, why does it say that? It's like clause 296.8. So that went on. Always Wear Red has there's a visible effect and an invisible effect to closing it down. The visible effect is I've done a thing, I had a brilliant time. It was owned by me, Ralph Little, and Zoe Rocha. So Ralph Little, if you've seen The Royal Family, he's Anthony. And do you know how he got involved?
No.
So basically, I was sat in a pub, and this is down to interesting, I think, because I was sat in a pub in London waiting to see a supplier. It was actually the embroiderer there's only one embroiderer who embroiders for the royal family, so I'm the kind of guy who goes, I want them to do my embroidery then. So I was sat waiting, and I was with my dog, Colin, and every time I go to London, every time I park, it's like 100 quid, because I'm so stupid, I just park in ridiculous places, And there's this guy outside a pub, I said, will you hold me dog while I go for a wee? And it was Ralph Little. And he said, yeah. So I went back and I said, can I show you this? And I showed him the portfolio when I came back out. And he's a Man United supporter, and there was a red connection, and he said, I'm waiting for someone. I said, this must happen all the time. Sorry, I'm being one of those knobby people who goes, I know you are, you don't know who I am. When he found out my name was Mychael Owen, there was Mychael Owen. So I said, look, Ralph. Oh, I said, cool. I said, I kind of sensed that I knew something about him. We went to 10 Downing Street, I'll tell you that story. He's a former junior doctor, right? And he's intelligent. I'd seen him on Twitter. Really interesting guy, nice fella. And I said, I want you to be in the first conversation. I said, I'd like to be a shareholder in this if you want, And he said, well, I'm just waiting for my mate, And his mate turned up, this lady, and I said, hello. He goes, this is Zoe Rocha. Her dad's John Rocha. I says, I don't want to talk to you anymore, Ralph. I want to talk to her. So, life just deals you these funny little cards. They both ended up as 10% shareholders of the company. I retained 80. We didn't make any money at all. 100 grand went in, about 100 and a bit went out over a period of 5 years, But we just had a bit of a giggle. We ended up in 10 Downing Street, and Jeremy Hunt is not a popular guy amongst humans. Junior doctors.
Amongst humans.
Yeah. And me and Ralph were walking towards 10 Downing Street, and Zoe as well, and there was these people giving out stickers with, I won't say the word, but not James Hunt.
Yeah.
Jeremy Hunt is and then there was a word. So Ralph had this on his tie. And we came out, and he's got, at the time he had 250,000 followers on Twitter, and he tweeted this thing, and he just wrote zoom in to his tyres, and like, oh, okay, cool. Just with number 10 door there, so we got told off for that. But it was just having a bit of a giggle. It's a bit disrespectful, I suppose, but a bit naughty. But that was towards the end of it. We'd had enough. The reason I had enough was, you know what? Fashion is driven by two drivers, which are the opposite to what I wanted to do: scalability and speed, basically. And I didn't want to do either. The bit of fashion I really ended up loving, I didn't use the word fashion, it was clothing, was hand knits, because hand knits are like little clicks. And the best, you just watch things. So you're a big guy, quite a big beardy guy, aren't you, Matthew? Yeah.
I'm bigger than I'd like to be. Yeah.
So that's a nice thing. That's a compliment. So the best knitter we had, bigger than all of us, big beardy guy, silver everywhere. But these things he was knitting for us got to 3 kilograms, and even he eventually had to give up, because you imagine
a 3 kilogram jumper.
Well, yeah, because we that's what we ended up doing. But it's like the brand evolved into a place where it was that stuff you wear when I'm off, because when I'm off, I want to be off. When I'm on, I want to be all on or all off now. I used to spend my life in this funny little bit in the middle. So the brand purpose shift to, if you're wearing these, clearly I'm not going to answer the phone, look at email. That's where the brand ended up.
Do you think if this had been around 30 to 40 years ago, before the fast fashion era that we're in now, do you think that it would have been different? Do you think it is just literally the era that we're in kind of dictated its path to some degree?
Perhaps. There is a market for it, and strangely, the few that we did sell, if someone wanted to buy one, at one point there were 700, they were over 1,000 quid at one point. They would wait, and they didn't really know exactly what it was going to cost. And that's strange if you get the brand right and the branding, so what it looks like, branding in my mind, and brand what you actually stand for, and you're just unbeatable quality. It's the difference between the bit where it was most successful. I lack, at the moment, with that business, I lacked consistency and application because I got a bit bored with it and I didn't like the industry.
So you broke your own rules, branding rules.
Well, I did, since you mentioned it, on terms of shifting the brand position from confidence is a colour through to downtime is life. So this was where we started, the relationship between what you wear and how you feel, to ending up, this is what you wear when you're doing nothing. So I shifted the brand position without changing the name, which is never good, but I did, and it was fine, actually. But the audience was never very big, but they were very significant people. You know, Tom Hardy's wears one, the great Faye Tozer wears one. Are you familiar with Steps?
Yes, of course.
The might that is Steps. You know, there's some decent people who, a lot of people I respect who wears them. I like that. But the thing was, what I did with Always Wear Red at the end, I loved it because it was exactly what I shouldn't do. I basically limited the core collection to 50. I mastered something and then stopped making them. And the reason is because it's like, what? Why would you do that? I said, well, I can't be asked anymore. You know, I know how to do that now. When I made furniture, I said to somebody once when I was in my early flipping 20s, I said, I don't want to make a desk because they've got 4 legs when I've made one. I know what the other 3 are going to look like, you know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that in me. I don't want to do what I can do. And that comes back to the Woody Allen thing that we were talking about, you know, joining clubs that'll have me as a member, you know, all that kind of shenanigans. I'm always interested in the next thing. So right now, I do a mixture of winding Always Wear Red down. This is a very long-winded answer. I'm ever so sorry. I think about 3 hours ago, you asked me a question. So right now, I'm winding down Always Wear Red, which is fine. There's a core collection of 50 hand-knitted scarves and jumpers, and that's it. We moved into a house in lockdown which has got 2 ears. It's got sticky out bits, which you've just turned into like really interesting Airbnb thingies. And then I'm doing this consultancy work currently with 3 companies, where I just go to 3 companies for between 2 and 6 days a month, and they pay me a day rate to help them to be a proper brand instead of just fannying about.
Mm-hmm. So in-house brand consultancy, not working with agencies on brand consultancy.
That's correct. I describe myself as an associate brand director, so I have to sit down with the owners and or the MD, or else I can't do it. And even when I sit down with them, a lot of the time I can't do it either because it's really hard. The integration bit, you know, being a brand, it's flipping hard. Getting someone to simplify, be consistent, all the stuff I'm not very good at in my own companies actually. But that's where I'm up to.
Well, in what you've written about brand and how simple it is and should be, how does that... There's an argument to say that it's something that you set up, get into motion and then walk away from, whereas obviously what you're describing is, you know, ongoing. So is it a case of it's never as simple as just setting it up and letting it go? You have to keep nudging people back onto track, basically. Is that effectively what you're doing in your 2 to 6 days a month? Correct.
And it's, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken, yeah, so finger licking good. 5-6 years ago they get a new marketing director and he goes, we'll get rid of finger licking good and we'll say so good. So this was the essence of the brand flavour. This one means fuck all. So within a year she was gone because they went, whoa, what's this? And it's like, let's remind you of what this brand's about. And because people do that, they get bored. Who was it very recently? John Hegarty said, you know, the people who get bored of marketing first are the owners of the brand itself. You know, the market tends not to. I wasn't very well read. Into my 40s, someone said, what books have you actually read end to end? And I said, only 2. There was Catch-22 because I had to, and Pet Sematary because I found it.
I thought you meant like industry books. You just mean books.
Books.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wouldn't read books. So I only snack on books. I just read bits. But in the last 5 years or so, I've become really well read with people who are alive and doing stuff and people who are not alive and did stuff, you know, because I became obsessed by comms, you know, the way to build enduring, really classic ways of communicating. I love the way that lots of the principles are really quite basic. I describe, you know, marketing and design and a lot of the creativity in your world perhaps as you know, a constant restlessness to reinvent and say some quite simple things in endlessly interesting ways. But brand itself, it doesn't change. Fix it and just have the balls to stick with it. And that's the balance, because people keep shifting their brand position, or they have no brand position. And if it's not authentic, there's a guy called Tom Roach who's hugely clever in terms of he works at a company called Jellyfish now. In the analytical side of what makes brands great and how marketing could and should be done. But he talks about the fact that there are people who are authentically sustainable, people who are pretending to be sustainable, and people who are trying to become sustainable. That's just one of the reports I was reading from him recently. And I can't be doing with companies who are pretending to be sustainable, of course, but I'm comfortable working with people who are either born sustainable or who are sincerely committed to becoming whatever sustainable means, and we do define that as clearly as we can, depending on the industry I'm in. But I want to work with authentic people who don't see marketing or creativity as something to polish up and pretend what they aren't, but it's just to clearly communicate what they are. I don't want to work with people who go, how do you help us to look great? Well, are you great? That's the first question. And I wrote this once, and again, it wasn't to annoy agencies, but don't work with anyone who's shit.
Sounds obvious.
But it does. But if someone said to me, Mike, when you had One Best Way for 15 years, did you actually question properly and bring your own opinions to the table about whether what they're saying they were doing, could they deliver on the promises that you were helping them to make? And I don't really know. And that's not good. But there are lots of agencies doing that now. Of course, I had £1 million wage bill. Now I don't. So now I can be a little more, you're not very good. So don't say, I'm not going to work with you to pretend that you are. It's not good for you, me, or them. And I've not suddenly become, Mr. Goody Goody. It's just don't do that.
It's interesting because when we make television adverts, obviously, as you know, they go through quite a strict pre-clearance process. And effectively, in this country, you can't lie on TV. You have to provide ample evidence that what you're saying, what you're claiming is true. And that obviously is quite specific to that. It's not across all of our clients and all the sort of work that we do. Sure. But it's an interesting process to go through. But as you were talking there, you sort of touched on it a little bit, but how do you balance between reading some of your essays? It conjures up an image of someone who is perhaps happiest sat thinking long term about things, having time to breathe and think things through and come up with concepts. I mean, not to oversimplify, but effectively like a Don Draper type work scenario where you have to be on it that day, but you might have 3 weeks to get to that point. Whereas obviously the actual day-to-day in our agency, and no doubt in yours, albeit doing different work, is there is a constant flow of work that needs to get done to other people's deadlines and out the door.
Yeah.
So how did you balance as best you could between having the space to kind of be creative, think creatively, and actually just get through the work that needs to get done? Because what you were saying before sort of implied, and I understand that you simply quite often don't have the time to do both. You kind of have to kind of pick and choose those battles a little bit.
The short answer to how you get to the great work is to have lots of not great work. So it's not honing one idea. And I know the picture that you and I are painting is Don Draper going, what can we do in 3 months?
With a scotch, of course. A thinking scotch.
Yeah, that kind of thing. It's not that. It's basically, let's do all these things. It's like the client going, well, fucking hell, calm down. But but I think if you've got a client who's going, yeah, okay, I don't want that. I want a client to go, no, but that one. Because you get to go, that's bonkers, that's boring. Well, the magic's probably about here. So basically, Sean says, there are lots of ideas going on, and you can kind of tell the ones that are going to get through. And it's being brave enough to go through the crappy ones and the not so good ones. And I find myself a lot of the time, you can probably tell, saying things out loud, and then I'll go, no. I'll go, I tell you what, let's do this. And then I'll go, before they've said it, I'll go, actually, no, let's not, that's ridiculous. But they kind of go, yeah. If I'm with a client, my clients I've been with, for the 3 clients I'm with currently, one's 5 years, one's 4 years on and off, and the other one's 10 years plus on and off, because we fall out. And I'll go, that person you've just employed is a fruitcake, and they will undermine this brand. They'll reduce it because they do not understand. If you want to pay me to help them to, I'm not here to, and it sounds very patronizing, but I am what I am. I believe what I believe. By osmosis, when I work with Les, do you know Les? You've met Les?
No.
Genius, really. When he came in, he said to me, not these words, he said, you don't know. He said, what you're doing is wrong, you know. It's not, the marketing that you're doing, Mike, it's okay, but it's marketing, if you like. It was like, it's okay. But he says, brand's where it's at. We just started to get an opinion. Like my timeline's getting a bit muddled. We had started to write things which challenged boring marketing. There was a sense that Mark Tinian largely and myself was going, okay, I get this. And I'm bored with that anyway, because I get bored with things, as you know. So I was really into this. Then Les came along and said, I can amplify and accelerate this to a level you could never imagine, because the stuff you're doing, Mike, currently isn't good enough. Now, a little bit of me could have gone, 25 people, 70 awards, 15 years, few million quid. But I went, okay, tell me all about it. I was Les's scribe for 7 years. Basically, he couldn't be arsed using a computer, so he wrote everything by hand, and I said, I'll type it all up. So that's what I did for 7 years, right? And on the back of it, he created trails for me to follow to learn even more, but genius, you know. It also made clear that the commonality of what he would recommend for this client or that client, whether it was Sage Gateshead, Virgin, Money, whoever, there were some quite big names at the time. We can talk about the renaming of Sage if you like, but we'll probably turn the camera off.
Yeah.
But back on the subject, I learned so much from him, but I had to have the humility. You know, I don't know if I'm proud of much in my life, but I was proud that my ego didn't go, who are you? It actually did go, who are you? And I'm like, oh, I know who you are. You know, the former head of planning and strategy from Saatchi's in Singapore, London and New York. I better listen. So I did. And I learned so much. And I had to reinvent myself, because I thought, fucking hell, this thing I've been doing, it's mediocre. And if someone really pressed me on it, are you really making a difference to these people? Are you actually getting the message right before you spend shitloads of money on the delivery of the message? I don't know. So I changed. So it was great to learn along the way.
That's interesting, because to me, a lot of people would be, the first instinct to answer that question, if they were posed, you know, effectively, is your work working for the client, would be to point to the actual numbers, the results. Doesn't sound like that's what you were thinking, though. You were thinking more along the lines of, is it creatively what it should be, and that was the more important thing?
It was, I only answered half of your question, Matt. Basically, the first half, I'm massively intrigued by extraordinary work, so it's just not ordinary. But the thing I'm not so good at is the immediate stuff. I have to be part of a team, I think, that goes, don't forget the day-to-day, you know. It's not a strength of mine that yeah, I do. I mean, I am interested in the numbers, but I'm interested in the magic, and I know that makes me sound a bit weird, but I don't care anymore. I'm interested in the intangible weirdness. Weird is such a great thing, you know. Some of the people you'll meet at the Do Lectures, if you watch the flipping many videos, or if you ever went to one, and it's oversubscribed every year. About 2,000 to 3,000 people want to go, and there's 100 tickets, and they cost $2,500 each, so it ain't cheap. And it's in West Wales, which is a red bugger to get to, you know. But the thing is, you're there with some stunning people that just do things differently, and I love different, you know. I once said when I had Violet Bick, it's better to be different than it is to be better, because there's so, and it's true. And I kind of, you know, you spit these words out, and you go, well, where's that from? It's true. It's better to be different than it is to be better. I love different, you know. The power of different is huge. But I'm sorry, I'm meandering a bit. Getting clients to buy into and believe in different makes them insecure, because they go, but they're not. That's not what they're doing. They're turning over more than us. They're bigger than us. I said, well, the reason I'm here is to stop you blending in. So why, strategically, would we do what they're doing? Let's learn from what they do that's good. But if all we do, there's another great word that isn't a great word, which is average. If all we do is do what they do, we will be averaging what they do, and we will be average. If your strategic goal is to be average or ordinary, I'll go. So I'm actually not a safe bet, but I don't want to be a safe bet, because I want to work with businesses who... Trigger points come at funny points. You can never really anticipate when trigger points, turning points, tipping points are going to come. And it's hard to play. You can't plan for a flipping tipping point. You just have to have several irons in the fire, it seems to me, and do several crazy things or adventurous things and see what... None of these things, by the way, will be irresponsible, stupid, or image destroying should they go wrong. I have to have a sense of what that is. But many of the things that we propose, or I propose people do, are daring and interesting by definition, or I don't want to do them. Why would I?
Well, I was going to ask about that. I mean, in 2023, even having an opinion can be quite scary for organisations in particular. Obviously, you know, in 2023 we're living in a time where people and companies can get cancelled for having the wrong opinion in quotation marks. So are you finding like pushback on that kind of simple point that you're making to people, have an opinion, and how do you kind of work through to what opinion is?
Funny if I was also just going to say, which ties in, you know, I'm sure you've had many times the situation where the client has the better response, which is, yes, we will do that. And then once you start down the road, they then spend all of their energy, whether consciously or not, trying to push it back towards something that is the same as everything else.
That happens a lot. And that normally happens when I'm not there. You know, if the relationship's wrong and I'm not put in the right position in the company, I will come back to your question in a second, sorry, Kevin. It can go backwards. You know, I'm there and it's whoa, whoa, whoa. And then I go back. If I'm only there 6 days a month, obviously there's 3 weeks in between. It's like, well, what's happened? I thought we were going to do this. So why did I mention that? It's because I have to be in the right position. If I'm not seen to be sat at the board table next to the owners and the MD, if you like, then there's no authority. One of the companies I'm working with at the moment, the culture is so inclusive and everything's made so much by consensus that they're actually eating themselves alive and they're going to plateau. That's a side issue. But back to the question about strategically, on the subject of these things that can get you cancelled, I just avoid them. Because I can't be bothered, because there are some subjects you can never be as right as you need to be for it to be right for the company, so I avoid them. And that's cowardly, but I don't care, because on balance it's better than going in with pointy elbows. And because it's amazing how there's a lot of once you understand the people you're talking to, the people you want to affect, it's really weird, because of course these subjects that get people cancelled are both, in my opinion, both the biggest and the smallest issues in the world. What I mean by that is everyone's got a bloody opinion of them because of the pack mentality that humans have. And it reminds me very much of when years and years ago, 20 odd years ago, we worked for the North of England Refugee Service, NERS, and we basically came up with a very simple set of words, which was see what you want to see. And we basically did a tiny bit of rudimentary research, and it's like, this is both a flipping, I'm about to make a sexist comment, I probably am. Blokes in a pub, bloody refugees. But actually, if you get them by yourself and show them a picture of a 6-year-old girl who's like their daughter, who is likely has a 50-50 chance of drowning, they change. So it's basically, you see what you want to see, you know. And I just wanted to say that individually, these issues are quite personal and I think just treating them maturely, in summary, because I'm hedging a bit here, because I don't really know I think I'm a bit cowardly. I avoid anything overt for a brand because of what can happen. And I think it's because, look, it's just not the place to get into these kind of bun fights and noise.
Well, not every brand or organisation needs to have an opinion on everything, do they?
On that subject, I think it's such an important thing you've just said. And this is a weird thing perhaps for me to say based on what my job is supposed to be. Brands don't have opinions because people don't give a shit about brands, really. It's like, whoa, hang on, what we've been doing for an hour then. They don't really. Brands, my job is to keep people tip of tongue and front of mind for when they might want to buy this thing or be a part of this thing. You know, they believe what I believe, so I'll go to them and not them. My job isn't to... I'm rubbish at selling. I'm bad. The people I fall out with most are sales teams because they don't get what I do and I don't like what they do and I'm not very good at it either. So I'm not there to sell. It's about building stories and perceptions and ideas and feelings around notions. Notion's a good word because it's imprecise. Not that I don't want to be measured in my work, because I do, but the ideas around things, that's where I want to live. Not the binary world of gay or straight or these letters, which I'm not going to attempt because I'll miss one, and then the one I miss will want me to be killed. And I don't really mean that either.
Well, I mean,
but you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the reasons I asked, to be honest, is because I think even opinions that you would never think anyone would really have a strong opinion about, including one of our podcasts where we talked about how we think homeworking doesn't really isn't great for creative agencies. Like
homeworking kills creativity, I think was the title.
It's things like this. I think I had something. Right? Was it Brian Cox, the guy with nice teeth who used to play the keyboard, who's now very clever with physics?
Yeah.
Don't know how that happened. Brian Cox.
Yeah, that's him.
So he said everyone should be entitled to opinion, but not everybody's entitled to be heard. And I do buy into that, which is, if we define the bit about being heard down to, yeah, but I don't want to listen, you know? Yeah, of course. And since you ask, yeah, okay, but I don't want to be dragged into the... Because your argument in some ways is just as valid as theirs. So I'm going to end up either somewhere in the middle. Just leave me alone, really. On the subject of brands, I think the best way to sum it up, and we'll move on before I get cancelled by someone, is brands aren't that important, which is a weird thing to say, as I say, based on my work, but they're not important enough to have opinions, but they're also they shouldn't be baddies either. I think having a self-awareness as a brand is very important. And I know this sounds fluid, and it's because I can't generalize about all brands on this subject, I don't think, because context is very important. But in summary, for me, the binary nature of so many of these conversations means I'm not really interested, because honestly, the more I learn, I'm not educated enough, without sounding stupid, to even know my own precise opinion on certain things. And I might be swayed, you might have a point.
Exactly, opinions change anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's okay, There are some clearly damaging isms. That's, but good people, thinking people kind of know what they are, I think. I'm exhausted now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
I could have warned you before.
It's a bigger subject than it perhaps should be, but it's kind of, it confuses me, because the issues that people can get cancelled about, if indeed that's what we're talking about, are big and they are important, but that probably means we shouldn't be tweeting about them or talking about them half cut, tired, or whatever. Or sometimes over the years I've written emails to people which have been rubbish and stupid simply because of the medium, not the message. You can't get stuff over in certain ways. Whoa, calm down. So I'm just a bit of a coward, maybe.
Just a quick one, speaking of writing, you write in a very specific style on the page, which, funny enough, you mentioned Dave Trott earlier, is exactly how he writes. Is there any link there? Just curious about that.
Okay, so the interesting, and this is a true thing, I'd never heard of Dave Trott until someone said to me, "You write like Dave Trott."
Right.
And that's, I mentioned it only, I think I mentioned it in this conversation, that I believe he is as good a writer on the subjects about which he writes, which it seems to me is where creativity lives, where it comes from, where it goes to, and how it can be nurtured and exploited, as anyone. But I'm not as clearly, I don't see myself as anywhere near him in terms of content. Stylistically, coincidentally, I am, it seems. And that was pointed out to me by a few people, but it came not because I was, if there's anybody I've inverted commas copied, if you like, it's probably David Hyatt. It's spelt funny, but you will find David, because David used to write in quite a stunted style. And the reason I started 50 odd on my 50th birthday on a blog was because I basically said to myself, I don't know if I am any good at writing, but I like to write. So I'll write, no one's looking, and I'll see if by doing a thing more makes you better at a thing. And surprise, surprise, by doing a thing more makes you better at a thing. My definition of better, by the way, is very, very crisp, but it's palatable. Writing palatably is it for me, because if you don't, no one consumes it. And then I'm only writing for me. I want to write. Someone said to me recently, a few people talked to me about writing a book, and I am looking at writing a number of books, but I said, I don't want to write a book in the way that you want me to write a book, with respect to this guy who basically ran a company that did high cost, low run books, because I said it creates an exclusive book, 1,000 or 2, 50 quid each. I don't want to do that. So if I'm going to write a book, since you brought his name up, the Dave Trott way, 10 each, sell a couple of million each. That's what I'd want to do. But of course, it makes me sound like a Burke, because I'm just me, and he is a, in my opinion, and it's the truth, a godlike advertiser and a great mind. And so I've got all of his books, of course, all 5, and I'm not like that. But if someone sees a little bit of that in me, then I take that as a great compliment, of course. But it's stylistically, I would suggest, I've got a long, long way to go in terms of content. I would suggest.
Interesting. You mentioned, obviously, you started the blog when you were 50, and you had you write that you felt at one point that you'd been your most creative when you were 5, and then you sort of moved away from that. Was 50 the point that you sort of started to move back? Because it sounds like you feel like you're back to where you were, back to where you were when you're 5, if you know what I mean.
You're right. The thing that tipped it really, Matt, is when we got the house with the ears. I described it with these 2 things. I started making things again, and I was. Am I supposed to say? I'll retract that. I was kind of in flow. I'm comfortable saying it. That's why I said I'll take that back. I was in flow and happy making stuff out of wood. No one telling me what to do. If I made it wrong, I would turn a chair into a table or a table into a chair. So that was me being creative. That was my definition of creativity. It was just doing stuff without fear of being judged, I suppose. And that's what made me write differently. It wasn't the process of writing itself. I'm sorry if I've gone off on one there, but the thing that changed me around the 50 or early 50s was making stuff again for me. I loved that, I still do. But the writing is interesting because I'm caught, where you've caught me now in October 2023 is I'm in a trap between money and creativity. And I think that money isn't great. Worrying about money isn't great for creativity, because I want to be able to create freely. And, typically if someone writes a good book with a decent publisher and it gets distributed far and wide, you end up with between 10 and 20% of the cover price. If you self-publish, it could be 40 to 60%, but then you've not got the reach. And I can't be arsed with the selling side. I don't like it, So if I ever write something, I think that's the natural next thing for me to do. And I often think, you've heard me write about you live 1,000 months, which is 84 years and 3 months, and then you die. So if you're going to do it, just do it now, because you're going to be dead in a bit, So I'm going to write a book, because if I don't, then I'll go, I wish I did. But I'm trapped because little mortgage, house with ears. We're very lucky because we can get money from people in our garden, but they're over there, and I don't like people, but they're only over there, so that's okay. And they don't make a mess because we charge a few quid so we don't get the fruit cakes. That's fine. That's a few £1,000 a year, and we're fine. We're lucky, blessed. But the writing thing reminds me of a very short story. The conversations I used to have with people when I left the businesses was people go, I go, what do you do? I do this. Not quite. I'm an accountant because I've just upset a lot of accountants. I do this. What do you really want to do? I paint in the garage. But it's almost like, don't tell anyone. I paint in the garage, or I sing. Well, why are you doing it out of the corner of your gob, and why are you not doing it? There's a bit of that going on. Just do it, Do what you were born to do, because I kind of like writing, and I fell out of love with it for a bit because I wrote every day for 2.5 years, then stopped because I felt like I was doing it for the dopamine, like, ooh, look at these people reading my thing. And I started to think, how can I write so more people will read my thing? Whereas at the beginning I was going, I'm just writing. I was also a little bit sensationalist and sweary and objectionable at the beginning, and now I'm a little more relaxed. I wrote very recently, it's better to be for something than against something, and it is. You get more people liking your work, and it's more palatable if it's more for something than... It's not most marketing's boring in it, which is, I believe, it is a belief of mine. I really should be talking about this is how to make marketing less boring. It's the same thing, but presented in a more palatable way. That's what I'm telling myself right now.
Just going back to... the event that you said you held.
Yeah, it was something along that we did 2. So one of them, the big one, the first one was marketing is a waste of time. Yeah. And there was something with the word bollocks in, or a second one. The venue for the first one was...
The second one was the one I was at.
Yeah. Was it at... It wasn't at Hulse Estate, it was somewhere else.
It was somewhere else, yeah. Somewhere in town, I forget where.
But it was... We kind of rode that wave for a couple of events, and we got people to pay us but didn't keep the money. We gave it to some charity or something, but we just didn't want the money. It was just basically, this is important stuff, so pay. It's only about 10 quid.
I'm just wondering, so if the message is it's a waste of money if you're not understanding the brand that you're actually working for?
In short, it's amplifying, in 2 words, it's amplifying nothing. Because we basically said the basic principle is if everyone in this room got sacked tomorrow, so you all stopped marketing, it would make no fucking difference.
Yeah.
Because you're all saying the same thing. If indeed you're all working for an accountant, you're all saying, you've all got pictures of an acorn saying we wish we were an oak. Stop it. You know.
I'm just wondering. Obviously, you said that everyone was quite angry and kind of
there was a
disputing
degree
it.
yeah.
Why do you think they were disputing that then? Is that because you're just upsetting, I don't know, easy money for them?
Well, the thing is, and this is very BBC now, you know, they're not there here to defend themselves. So there's a degree of me sugarcoating it. But for my truth, and it was pretty true, you don't have, to talk about marketing is a waste of time, and a significant percentage of the audience are marketing agencies. You know why they're there, is to challenge you on the claim. What happened, they left probably as disgruntled as they were when they came. But the point was, we're not sat here as One Best Way. We're sat here as Violet Bick, which is a brand consultancy. And at the time, by the way, if people knocked on the One Best Way door, all we'd done, by the way, by creating 4 narrowly focused brands, was making 4 doorways to the same place, because it was the same management team, the same overhead, actually. So it made sense financially as well. But the point was, if people knocked on the door of a creative agency, can you raise the awareness of this? We would talk to them about the brand position, and if it wasn't present, we'd say, go to Violet Bick. Where is it? Stand up. Sit down, you're there now. It's kind of that, but it's a different team of people with a different skill set. In short, the people in the room had a different skill set Roger Blight was there at Nike when they employed, when Nike was there, and they employed a single figure number of people. Nike. Godlike people who I listened to, and basically, in a semi-arrogant way, I was basically saying, I don't listen to you, I listen to him. Mm-hmm. And the Drum magazine didn't like us very much either, because it was like when we employed Roger Blight, it was he's the fucking the FD. What does he know about that? It doesn't matter, because they were talking about us, and there was a lot said in the Drum magazine which was beyond the pale, really, about me personally. But eventually, the guy at the time, Gordon, I said, some of those comments are kind of weird. You choose what to do. Then he took them down, took a lot of the comments down, because they were attacking me personally.
On what basis?
It was because did we go too far? I'm not sure, but we had to go at marketing companies and said, you don't know what you're doing, because you're and I'm sorry for you guys, I'm repeating myself, but you don't understand the difference between brand and marketing. If marketing is about amplification and making the message interesting, if the message itself is the same as everybody else in the category, what's the point? And by the way, I was introduced to the difference between only in the last few years, distinctiveness versus differentiation versus marketing the category, which legitimately is only the only legitimate strategy if you invent the category, or you've got such a large percentage share of the category that everyone raise it, blah, blah, blah. Strategically, I know what to do. Now, back then, I didn't know what to do. And this is probably the answer. I was as crap as them until Les came along. I was doing it. We were getting £1 million a year for just say anything about us. Just say it louder than them. Well, you need a bigger media spend then. You need a full page ad to say fuck all instead of half page.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. So if we say it louder, more people will listen, yeah. But how about if you get a quarter page ad and say something that they're not? Getting people to do the opposite is amazing. The brand theory of how number 2s beat number 1s. We know that Pepsi nearly caught Coke when they said they made it the drink for old people. The real thing versus the drink for the new generation in the 80s. That's a classic. A number 2 brand doing the opposite of the number 1 brand. Strategic, but it makes your head spin. Brand sense is entirely different than common sense. But when you say that to people, you beat the number 1 by doing the opposite of them. Absolutely. And here's an example of how and why. Oh, cool. That's why I got a bit geeky about reading stuff, because the rules, all the greats talk about the fact that the only media that doesn't change is the human being, the human psyche. We're all born the same. We've not evolved in flipping 50 to 100 years beyond what was effective when Bill Bernbach was going on to what we're doing now. But we just forget, because we go, oh, look, a new techie thing.
Just a quick one on the name. Was it as simple as you just liked that character's name in that film?
Oh, Violet Bick, yeah, it was. I took a lot of advice from Mark, because the business was called Violet Bick, and it was basically about distinctiveness. Actually, no, it wasn't. I know what it was. It was about naming after a person, because our territory was the north of England, and this is weird. Our territory is the north of England, and the consensus with the brand consultancy is you go back to the, Burnback, Trott, they all named them after people. So we just made a name up. It was Violet Bick. I do love the film It's a Wonderful Life. But strangely, we wanted to be part of that crowd. But at the time, we couldn't find another narrowly focused, which I believe is the number one rule of all great brands, stay narrow. There was no brand consultancy we could find. Not one in the Northeast. And Leeds, Manchester, we couldn't find anyone who just set the stall out, we're a brand consultancy. The slogan, by the way, of Violet Bick was stop marketing, start branding. And the reason we kind of did that was because someone said, so you hate marketing? No, we've got a marketing company over here. Violet Bick had 4 people, this had 20 people, so we don't hate it. We're just saying do it in the right bloody order. Ready, aim, fire, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the name was wanting to be part of a gang, which was strategically the right thing to do at the time, simply because in that category, in the territory within which we operated, there was no other brand consultancy at the time. We did not a load of research, but we couldn't find one. So we thought we'll be that one and we'll follow what they did. So we chose Violet Bick.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, well, we've been going for an hour there. We'll start to ask a few wrap-up questions.
Anything?
That's okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
What questions?
Wrap up.
Okay, cool.
I think since you've mentioned it, assuming that there's some creative people watching this podcast and listening to this podcast, what 3 books would you recommend that they read?
Okay. The first one that's been around forever, I suppose, is Positioning by Al Ries and Jack Trott. I'm going to mention 4, I think, so if you don't mind. So there's one called Peaks and Valleys, which I've just got. There's a book called, some of the best business books aren't business books, you know what I mean? Peaks and Valleys, which is about why the crappy times are really good for getting you to the good times, and why if you're not careful when you're in the good times, you'll end up back in the crappy times. It's a very short book that took 20 years to write. So I'd say, I can't remember who wrote it. It's the same guy who wrote another book. Anyway, Peaks and Valleys, and then the book that the founder of Patagonia wrote, Let My People Go Surfing, is a great.
Spencer Johnson?
Yeah, he wrote a hugely well-known book. It wasn't How to Make Friends and Influence People, I don't think, but it was, Who Moved My Cheese, he wrote, I think. Yeah, so that's a hugely, these are kind of cheesy, excuse the pun, but so the 2 books I would read, which aren't really, how to do business, but one is Peaks and Valleys, and the other one is Let My People Go Surfing by, I can't pronounce his name, Yvonne, I can't pronounce his last name, who set up Patagonia. On the subject of what I'm supposed to be doing and be quite good at is positioning, Al Ries and Jack Trott. And then Al Ries and his daughter, I think, have written a number of, they sound really terrible, the 12 rules of business branding and internet. They're really good, they're decent. Annoyingly, Stephen Bartlett's book's pretty good. So not only is he minted, quite nice looking with, a nice hat, he's got a nice book as well. So that's pretty good. A book by a guy who's become very vocal on LinkedIn at the moment, Alex Smith, and it's not called Bullshit Strategy, it's called Not Bullshit Strategy, or da-da-da. It's good, decent little book, it really is.
On the Bartlett thing,
yeah.
Do you think he's actually offering anything? Obviously, he's very popular. Do you think he's actually offering anything different, or do you think he's just packaged differently?
I think probably a little bit of both. I think he's quite a heroic figure for them, their youngsters, which I think is a good thing. I think that he's an advocate of accidents from the things I hear and read. He was up here once, Paul Lancaster. Paul? Yeah. So Paul brought him up here for the last one of Paul's days that he did. Decent guy, I think. Who knows, you know what I mean? But sorry, to answer your question, yeah, it's beautifully well packaged. And when he was up here, there was someone to his left photographing and filming him all the time. So he is his own character.
Yeah.
but he doesn't bring anything new. You know what was really good about his book? It's just age-old principles. All the little chapters are, I'm going to tell you a thing, then he tells you the thing, then he tells you the thing he just told you. So it's like eating something that leaves a lovely taste in your mouth. It's like, what was he on about? No, I'm going to tell you this thing. Okay, cool. Here it is. Now here's the thing I just told you. So it tastes nice, it's neat, and the way it's presented, there's a lot of common sense in there, I think.
When you said you think it's good that the younger generation look up to him, the flip side of that is it seems like pretty much everyone in their 20s thinks they're destined to be some kind of millionaire. Is he feeding into that, do you think? And not to make this too much about him, I'm just interested.
I think it's a really great thing you've brought up. It seems to me that the subject at the kind of, if you look behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz I'm talking about now in my little brain. So if you peek behind the curtain, he's had some crappy times, you know. And the story of where he's come from to where he's got to within 10 years from, you know, selling his telly in a flat with a mate. Where's the telly gone? I had to sell it to pay the rent. I've got £250 million in the bank now. I think that the hard work element, you know what I mean? Because my daughter's 7 and she's not quite started her own business yet, which is disappointing. But my point is, she understands. Well, she doesn't. Of course, she doesn't. But one of the, let's help them to understand that if you're just working hard, and I suppose the thing about try a bit of this, try a bit of that, and that went wrong, and there's a bit of that I think with a Stephen Bartlett type person, which is useful, I think. And I think that will he end up doing things for the greater good? We're not getting to it now, changing the world, but I think we can all change our world, and I think he can change his world. I think he's a force for good, in summary. And on the subject of different, I think based on his age, I think there is something about him which is valuable to use in that their social media as a tool that can be used for good.
I think, I'm sure it's real to a point, but obviously I'm sure it's amplified in the edit of Dragon's Den. But he and Tuka Suleiman, who obviously represent different ends of the career spectrum, obviously constantly sniping at each other and having little fallouts, and I think it's interesting to watch. I wonder how much of it is real. But
I know. Recently I was talking to someone, said the media is a prism through which anything is presented in whatever way the prism wants to present it to us. I think, without going off on a subject which will take us forever, the baddies of so many things in the world that are not so good these days is the media, rather than this body or that body, of how things are presented and how we're wound up and stirred. And I'm talking about mainstream plus, the marginalised channels as well. But I don't know why. I'll shut up going on about that because it'll bring the mood down. But on the Stephen Bartlett type thing, I hope that there has to be a degree of authenticity. It strikes me, and it's enough. It's enough. I think I would say that none of us are clearly squeaky clean, but there's enough good stuff there to make him a force for good, in my opinion. On the subject of books, are there any more books? I don't think. Any
of Dave Trott's?
Yeah, I suppose so. On the subject of creativity, what's that one with the funny title, which is I've read into a few times about Whipple.
Not sure.
Whipple.
Hey, it's called Whipple Squeeze This, or Here Whipple Squeeze This. It's about bad creativity, actually sometimes being the right creativity.
Bad in what sense?
Just naff. Just naff.
Are we talking using Comic Sans font or a bad idea?
Just annoying.
Hey Whipple, squeeze this.
Yeah,
the classic guide.
Yeah, it's a book that's been around for a long, long time, and it's a decent book because it's about basically there was all sorts of sophisticated research done about how people buy toilet tissue and certain tissues, and just basically this toilet tissue was this annoying character called Whipple who just went on squeezing toilet paper, but there's still a shitload of toilet paper. And sometimes it's just about getting into your psyche and being quite annoying. And if you think back, not now, there'll be times where you go, I'm really annoyed by that, but you might have bought it anyway,
Well, absolutely. I mean, some of the most prominent brands in the UK today started off being hyper annoying.
Yeah.
Because that's how they get into your brain, and then they can build from there if they're clever.
I think so much of what I'm trying to do, and it does probably draw a circle around so much of what we've talked about today. And it's not me saying it for the first time, because you'll have heard it before. And it's nothing more than if you're not noticed, then it doesn't matter what you say. So it's being brave enough to do that thing that gets you noticed. And then make sure you're not saying something ridiculous or samey when you are noticed, of course, and you actually believe in the change you want to make. But you have to start with being noticed, or else what's the point? And the Whipple thing, of all the things we've said today, the Whipple thing, I'm like, what's he on about? The Whipple thing, decent book.
So speaking of getting noticed, I think we'll have to ask you about appearing completely naked on television at one point in your career. Like, what was that like, and what was the kind of reaction to that?
Well, we got them. Oh God, we got polarizing again. We got the phone call on a Friday because Virgin One said we've been Virgin One for a bit and we're relaunching the channel. We did a load of test things, and one of the pilot shows is The Naked Office, which basically will, as you know, they said we'll put a psychologist with you for 2 weeks called David. I can't remember. And by the end of the 2 weeks, you'll all come to work naked. So I said to the team, which was only about 12 at the time, I said, look, if you want to do it, we'll do it, and if you don't. But I said, keep in mind, actually, I asked them, but then I got one of the other guys to ask them as well, so it wasn't like the boss bloke asking, I said, keep in mind that we do ask our clients to do crazy things. And 2 of the team moved their desks into the office next door for the 2 weeks that they were there filming. But 10 of them said, yeah, why not? I mean, one of the girls was getting the bits and bobs out down the big market every weekend anyway. And that's not me saying that, that was her. She said, oh yeah, no worries. There was the lady on reception, one of the best people ever had in the team, really. When they stopped the camera running, you say, you can put your clothes back on now if you want. She said, oh, it's all right. She wasn't bothered.
Which ultimately was effectively the perfect outcome of the psychological, not experiment's probably the wrong word, but what they were trying to demonstrate with the show. Her reaching that point of comfort was the point of the show, wasn't it?
It was just it's fascinating. So it's like, it was. I described it. It was naff and sugary and sensationalist. But 3 million people saw it in the year, and did it get us a bit of business? Maybe not. I don't know. That really wasn't the intention. It was just, it was good fun. You know what I mean? What I'm saying now as a 55-year-old bloke is different than then. Back then it was, let's just do this because it's interesting, I think. Here it was, why not? I'm a little more why not now. It was, on the second day of the 10 days, because it was Monday to Friday, Samantha, the receptionist, didn't come in. They sent a boy in a trench coat, took his coat off, hung it up. He said, he's going to be the receptionist for today, and he was just nothing on apart from his shoes. So he was wandering around for the day. It wasn't the day, but they pretended it was the day, and maybe it was half a day. But all we did after he'd gone was wash the chair. So it was good fun. After a bit they had a life drawing, and then we all had socks on our bits. You know what I mean? And I drove I lived near Bedlington at the time, so I drove in my car naked with an A to Z. Remember an A to Z?
I do.
Yeah.
I can't get away with saying A to Z and not being really, really old now, but I had an A to Z on my knee to cover my bits, but there was me there and a camera person next to me filming me driving however far it is from Bedlington to Newcastle.
Didn't draw any police attention on this drive?
Well, there was a double-decker buses looking down into the car. It's interesting, but it was such good fun. But of course people were, you're a disgrace to the world and to our industry. There was a bit of that going on in Drum magazine. We didn't really court the magazines much, but 1 or 2 people just thought we were disgusting.
But it didn't lose you any business, and it may have won you some business.
Yeah,
but I think so. Just by the by.
It's more about, I think it's really weird. Business, we're all businesses, but we're all still people. Mm-hmm. I'm ever so sorry to be sitting here stating the obvious on your time, but we're all still people, and it's just having a bit of a giggle, really. I did definitely tune into this when I'd had enough. I sensed that my 1,000 months were over half gone. 83 years and 84 years and 3 months, 1,000 months, and then we die. So it's just do stuff, really, but be aware of the consequences and don't be horrible to people is a good rule, I think. But just why not? I'm much more of a why not person. I always have been, really, than a why. I live in the world of the possible rather than the world of the probable, which I'm glad about, really.
Mm-hmm. I think that your timing, what was that, about 15 years ago, that show?
Yeah.
The fact that it was in the social media era, but not what the social media era is now, I think probably worked to everyone's advantage, because you're probably right at the tipping point where you could still actually just and have fun with it, and people would generally, whether they had an opinion or not, you'd get some feedback, as opposed to if it aired now. I think it'll be a very different experience.
Well, to prove you're right, and to prove my superior knowledge on all things, when it was going on, somebody said to me, there's a lot of people talking about you on Twitter. And I said, what's Twitter?
Yeah.
So that dates perfectly what you've just said, because it's like, I don't know what it is. But yeah, there were conversations going around what we were doing on there, and it was odd, It wasn't lots. Let's say it was 24 people, you know what I mean? It's not what happens these days.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right to mention it and reference that, to timestamp it there, because I did say, what's Twitter?
Well, I think it's a great point that you made, to say to the team, you can do it or not do it. Just bear in mind, we're asking our clients to do crazy things. It's one of those things where you can have any conversation with a client after that point and say, well, look, we did this.
You are right. And the risk we took was whether, and this contradicts something I mentioned earlier about media companies, present company, accepted, of course, media channels more specifically being baddies. There were a couple of things that we said, don't put that in, and they didn't. So that was really nice, the fact that the company was called Shine. They ended up merging with Endemol, I think, and doing certain things that you'll know more than me. But they were decent, A couple of people, they had brought a photocopier and said, photocopy whatever you want. And a couple of the more senior people photocopied things that they then thought, I wish I hadn't photocopied those things. And we said, don't put that in, and they didn't.
That's good. Good enough.
It's good.
Particularly as I think Shine might have been a Murdoch company, so if they actually had those ethics, very good.
Yeah, they did what they said they were going to do, which was good. But it was a risk, but risk's okay, I think. We've done all right. I mean, it's good fun. I mean, who knows what'll happen next? I really don't know. I'm frightened of the book thing, and as I say, you've caught me in a funny place, because going back to the Always Wear Red thing is a failure from a business perspective, but I weirdly don't regret it. Not because I'm supposed to go, but I don't regret it. I don't regret it, because if I hadn't done it, I'd feel worse. I'm glad I did the thing. And we made, if you work out the hours, 6 or 7 years, made about 10 grand. It makes it's a nonsense. But it showed me you can speak to anyone, talk to anyone. I've got time to tell you one more little story, or shall I?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you know the thing that happened with Kes?
No.
Kes. So the short story with Always Wear Red was I loved the visual, the connection between how you feel and what you wear was where it all started. And I used to live in St. Peter's Basin, which is right near Byker. So one day, and this is I'll keep this short, so I wandered up through Byker, and a lad walked towards me carrying a golden eagle in Byker. Now we know, if anyone doesn't know Byker's all right, but
it's not golden eagle territory.
It's not. So I'm thinking he's robbed a goat. What's he doing? There's people with
he picked up Jasmine, didn't he?
I don't know. I mean, you nick a bike, but what's he doing with a golden eagle? So I went up to him and said, what are you doing? But interestingly, I looked at him, and the back. You've seen the film Kes. Ken Loach, David Bradley, Billy Casper. So I said, what are you doing? And he said, I work at this, da-da-da. And apparently he'd been sacked and taken a golden eagle home.
As you do.
So anyway, this was what happened, right? I thought I want to do a photo shoot based on a film I really love. It's in the top 5 best British films ever made. Ken Loach, who I adore, and this little Billy Casper bloke. Billy Casper was the character, David Bradley was the actor. So this is a lesson in creativity, I think, in just keeping going. Not knowing when to stop has got me into a lot of, not trouble, into a lot of great things. So I basically said, John Kirtley is the man who owns the flipping falconry. Is that the word? So, okay, fair enough. So I rang John, and I started chatting with him. I had this, and a photographer in the Northeast, Dan Prince, great photographer, love Dan. So I said, Dan, I want to do a photography, which is like a homage to Billy Casper. There's the film. So he sat on the goalposts at one point.
Right, yeah.
And Dan said, I'll do that then. He said, well, John Kirtley, the guy at the Falconry, his son looks a bit Billy Casper-ish. He's the same age. We'll use him. So and then I thought, I'll ring David Bradley, right? So he's the guy who played Billy Casper, won a BAFTA when he was 10 or 12 or something. I spoke to David, and David said, what do you want? Do you want to do some T-shirts with me on? And no, because he's got the famous thing. So I said, no, but I said, whilst I'm on the phone to you, do you want to come up, be in this photo shoot? Look, the reason I'm telling you this is because Boy with Golden Eagle leads to John Kirtley, and I said, John, falconry man, have you seen Kes? And he went, yeah, I've seen Kes. And I said, do you know Billy Casper, the lad? Yeah, I know Billy Casper. And he lifted his T-shirt up. He's got a tattoo of him. Really? Of the boy on his thing. So I said, oh, you've seen the film? What a knob I asking him if he's seen the film. So I said, do you want to meet Billy Casper? He was almost like fainting. So I said to David, do you want to come down? So the short story is we ended up here. Was it here? Where are we? What's this building called?
Northern Design Centre.
Here. So in that room just across there's me, David Bradley, an audience of I don't know how many, just came to see and hear him and watch Kes with Billy Casper. David Bradley, who's now a friend, and there's a film of me and him having dinner on the website. He's crying, and it just created a wonderful, wonderful moment, just because some boy had robbed a golden eagle. So my point is, it's like, just keep doing crazy things. Just keep asking crazy things. I didn't know I was going to end up sat in a room watching the last 3 minutes of Kes, sat next to Billy Casper, who's 60 now, and he's writing a prequel or a sequel, I can't remember, to Kes, talking about Ken Loach, and going into HMV, which I did, and we filmed it, and it's at the website, with David Bradley, buying all of the Kes films, and there's an attendant there going, oh, I love this film. I'm like, Billy Casper stuff. This is on the website now. Oh, I love that film. So do you know who he is? He looked at him, and this guy's crying in HMV, and so it's just amazing, these things that just, if creativity is another word for bravery, not giving a shit, or really giving a shit, as it says on the homepage of your website, that's what it's about for me. It's just pushing and pushing, not being ashamed or afraid of what might happen, but probably being more ashamed or afraid of what might not happen. Because that was a brilliant day, which I'll always remember. I met some amazing people just by asking stupid questions. Do you want to come down? Yeah, okay. No, I don't want a T-shirt. I want you to be here and watch Kes with some amazing, amazing people.
Yeah, you actually did what a lot of people would love to do but don't feel confident enough to do, which is follow their curiosity, isn't it? Just to actually be interested in something and then act on that interest, as opposed to just have it be a passive thing and say, well, that's the thing over there that I like. You actually then follow through to think, well, what would be the next thing I could find?
Just asking. Not being afraid of, it's just a no, isn't it? Keith, who I worked with in my first business, had loads more girlfriends than me, because he just used to ask loads of girls. Yeah. No, okay. Will you? No, okay. Just that, I would know. Oh God, no.
Yeah, we know someone that's got the same technique, but on Tinder these days.
Yeah, so just ask. I think Morrissey wrote a song about it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a lovely note to end on, I think.
It is,
there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for coming along, Michael.
Really appreciate it. It's been very interesting.
Yeah, Matthew's going to do the outro of the podcast now, because he's
Kevin loves
it's his brand now.
Kevin loves me to tell people to smash the like button and smash the subscribe button, all that kind of thing.
And do you want to tell people to follow on X as well now?
Do I have to say X brackets formerly known as Twitter? Have we moved through that phase yet? Follow us everywhere. We're on YouTube, Spotify, X, Instagram, the works, right?
Yeah, we're on everything.
Facebook? We must do Facebook.
Yeah.
If it's out there, we're on it. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.